All right, I got questions for Hunter and Brody.
Let's hear it.
Hunter.
Yeah.
I've heard you say that Innova is failing on the social media side.
Mm-hmm.
When was the last time that you checked their follower counts?
Ooh, check the follower counts, Hunter.
The follower counts or the follow accounts?
Like the numbers.
Like number of followers?
followers.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Because I checked it a couple days ago. Because I find that debate intriguing. But so they have like 100,000 more than Discraft. Discmania is like, I think it's second. But I was just curious, like, why do you say that Innova is failing compared to Discraft, Discmania, etc.?
Well, first off, I think that the only company, in my opinion, that has been doing a consistently good job has been Dynamic Discs. I think a lot of manufacturers just haven't put the foot for some. I think that they don't see the potential on social media. I think they're really overlooking it. Innova, on a day-to-day basis, doesn't do a bad job. I think they do a bad job on social media marketing their players. I think they do a decent job. I mean, they're constantly posting reels of different things going on. They are present on social media. What I've talked about in the past, and I guess it hasn't been clear, I think that they aren't doing a great job on social media marketing their top players and their pros that are on tour week in and week out. But to be fair, there's not many companies that are. I think that a lot of companies are just overlooking ways that they could be using these players that they have unlimited access to just drive sales like they've never seen. And I think that they just don't know the potential, so it's hard for them to see the value in it because to people who don't use social media regularly, it seems silly to think that it could drive the amount of sales and traffic it can. And traditional marketing just seems like a no-brainer. It seems like a more basic move, like putting signs on courses and commercials and stuff like that. But organic marketing on social media, you can get a lot more traffic for cheap, and I think that people are just overlooking it. But yeah, Innova does a good job overall. Good job. I think they do a decent job overall, but I think that where they're struggling or failing, if I've said that in the past, is the player marketing side.
Hey, guys. Hey, TMZ. How's it going?
Oh, we're doing good out here. Breaking news left and right.
This isn't my debate, but I just want to point out that I think I'm just going to refer to Ricky as the Kevin Durant of disc golf because he's getting pretty soft on socials, and I'm expecting some burner accounts to be made pretty soon.
Oh boy.
But sorry, anyway. So you guys touched on it, I think, on maybe grip block, but I'm going to just kind of tackle it further and say that I actually think Innova is doing a good, their strategy is not on accident on what they're doing this year. I think they're recognizing that there may be a bubble happening in terms of pro signings, and I think they're adjusting accordingly because they know that in a few years, companies are going to realize that they're overpaying for these players and they're going to be able to scoop up some players for less. Also, I think if you guys have seen the movie Moneyball, I think Innova's kind of doing a Moneyball thing here where, think about some of their best players that are selling the most discs. You think of a Jeremy Colling, you think of a Nate Sexton. They're not doing anything for them. They're getting them on the cheap. They're getting them with no help on socials, and they know they can throw out their discs and get them sold because they're getting their media elsewhere. So, I think the issue with, and I'm a big Prodigy guy. I love Chris Dickerson, but it would be hard for you to convince me that Discraft in general is going to sell more discs this year than if they didn't sign him. I don't see that really was a pushing point. I think those discs would have got sold elsewhere on other Tour Series discs. Obviously, there's going to be some people that do come over because of Chris, but to warrant that amount of money is hard for me to believe. And I think kind of companies are going to eventually push more towards maybe less Tour Series discs. And when I say less, I mean less people having one, or just, to go to the cannibalism, as Brody mentioned, I think last week, it's not making them sell more by having more Tour Series. Like, they're still getting the sales they would have got. And I think it's only a matter of time that these prices on discs are just going to go higher if they want to be able to keep these players.
I think when you think about two contracts, I don't think we're thinking about them right now that way, or at least I don't think manufacturers are thinking about them right now in the way that they will 10 years from now. Because what you were basically saying with the Chris Dickerson thing, right? Discraft's probably not going to make more money with having Chris this year than if they didn't have it. I think down the road, though, it's not going to be so much about, hey, we're going to pay this guy $100,000 and we're going to make $500,000 worth of his discs and sell them.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more of, hey, we're going to have this guy, we're going to pay him $100,000 and he's going to be throwing our stuff and not throwing our competitors' stuff.
Sure.
And I think that's going to be more in line with, how you look at other companies and other sports, how they are swooping up where you're like, man, they have so many people on their team. It's like, why do they have so many people? It's like, well, they don't want other people, other companies, other competitors to have that person per se. So, Discraft picking up Dickerson right now basically maybe might have blocked Dickerson from going to Dynamic and having Ricky and Dickerson there, which might have made Dynamic a much bigger company this year, whatever it may be. But I think you're right in the sense of where if you're looking at just numbers to numbers and you're looking at a player simply of how much money are we going to make off of his disc that we're selling with his name on it, I don't know if that's the right way of going about it.
No, I think that's where I was talking about it a little bit earlier. I think that Innova must be on the same wavelength as what I was kind of saying, and they're just betting that basically the bubble of everyone, because Tour Series discs are one thing. Innova has Tour Series discs, like the Sexton Firebirds are Tour Series discs. Germ has his Thunderbird, so on and so forth. It's the extra discs beyond Tour Series that I think are where things are going to start getting hairy. And Innova has never caved to that market. Innova, they'll do some fun runs and stuff through DGU, but that's like a separate company. Realistically, I think it's actually under like Carolina Flying Disc Association or something. But that's a whole separate thing. Innova itself hasn't really been putting out like constant player stamps and stuff like that. They let retailers do that, and other companies that want to do it run it through Innova. But Innova themselves aren't having to market all these new things. They have stock discs, and then like a few times a year they have Tour Series, and that's that. And I think that Innova is like, this is the model. Everyone else, like, you can do that. It's going to work for a few years, but people are going to come back to our model, and we're going to just keep doing what we're doing. I think that's the bet Innova's making. The more I've thought about it and talked about it on podcast, the more I think Innova might be smart. I've never thought they were dumb. I just thought that they were thinking differently, and I think that my mindset is starting to align with Innova a little bit more. I think they know what they're doing.
I don't know. Obviously, this is only one website, but Infinite just put out their most popular molds from 2021, and Innova was 12 of the top 20.
Yeah.
And they can still rely on their molds. I think that and their brand, and I think that they're not dumb, and they can see that they don't need to rely on players at the moment, and maybe they will at some point. But when these contracts run out and there's a better idea of if the market is valid or not, they could grab whoever they want to. Like, I think we all can agree that they probably have the biggest bank account. If they really wanted to bring anybody in, they could. And I think they're waiting to see if this is actually feasible to have this many big, like Discraft. Like Discraft this year, is it really realistic? Because I think the other thing that I don't know if the companies are falling victim to, but I know like fans and even some media are falling victim to. Everyone's saying, well, this person needs to get this much because they might win more events than so-and-so. Like if Ricky wins, if Paul wins another Worlds, he better make sure he gets paid more. But the issue, like, this isn't a team sport to where like it matters how many, like, oh, I'm going to make sure Paul, I have to pay Tom Brady because he's getting us the most championships. Like, that's not really relevant. Like, when you look at like a golf, the second highest person in terms of sponsorships is Phil Mickelson, which, I mean, he's like 40th in the world. Like, it's not about how good you are necessarily in terms of being valid for a sponsorship. It's what you can bring to that company off of the course and sales and all those things. And I think people are just looking at it wrong of, well, if he gets paid, oh, well, if Eagle's the best player in the world next year, he better get at least $1 million. That might be a bad example because he pushes plastic just as well as probably the top 3 or 4 guys. But, if it was somebody like even like a Chris Dickerson, if he's number 1 in the world next year, I don't think that warrants getting paid $1 million a year if he's not putting the sales that the other guys are.
Yeah, and it's also the same notion as like what you're talking about where Phil Mickelson, you can throw him in a commercial and he's going to do well. He's going to thrive.
But Phil, I think, is a bad example because the only reason I think he's not winning at the top level is because he's older now. but he
was. He never really. I mean, he was always in Tiger's shadows.
There was a couple years where he was back and forth.
But he was like a top player.
He was a top player.
So he's still one of the most recognizable faces because of that.
Well, okay.
If he was never a top player,
the number one. That's fine. I agree. John Rahm's another number one player in the world, and I'm pretty sure he's like 12th on sponsorships right now. So, like, if we flip it that way, like, he's not super marketable, and he's the number one player in the world, like, you know, that'd be like
the tough part, I think, in disc golf is the player is going to, what you're saying is basically, like, the player isn't worth, like, let's say we'll go with Calvin. What you're saying is Calvin might not be worth $1 million a year that Ricky and Paul got. Yep. Issue is, will you be able to convince the player of that? Because the player now knows what other people are getting.
But if no one's willing to pay you,
what's scary is like, what
if all the companies don't pay him what he's wanting, then either he's got to not take something or take less. Like if they all,
but that's what I think.
And then if someone's not dumb enough, but makes that wrong decision to. I mean, NFL, like, now we're switching, like, to team, but this happens all the time where a team's desperate for a quarterback and overpays when no one else would be willing to pay for them. Yeah. So, like, that situation would happen, but I think we're kind of, like, people are falling victim to, like, the best player has to get the best amount of money. Like, this, when it's not a team sport, like, that isn't how it works.
I think UFC is also another individual sport. That's a good one of where some people are getting paid, like a Conor McGregor, for example, the amount of money he gets paid per fight, and this is before he even blew up, the amount of money he was getting. And even now,
when he's not at the top, he's going to be getting paid more than everybody.
It's going to be interesting if someone from, like, I mean, Europe would probably be the easiest example right now because there are a lot of good players. But, like, imagine someone from Asia, someone from a country that is a non-English speaking country, comes over and tours and, like, has a really good season, but doesn't speak English.
Mm-hmm.
Or if disc golf isn't big in their country.
It's not big in their country, but they also can't, like, that is a huge, like, in the UFC, like, you watch players get so much more popular when they start learning how to speak English, because when they go to press conferences and stuff, they have to try to sell a fight. Mm-hmm. And if they're having to go through a translator, it's not as great.
You can't have, like, the same passion and stuff.
It's going to be the same thing as, like, I mean, how can I connect to someone if all their Instagram stories and all that stuff is just in a different language?
That's what I'm saying. Europe,
even though they might be the number one player in the world.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think Europe, I think Asia's a better example in disc golf world than Europe, which you used Asia, simply because Europe might be a bigger market than the U.S. It's mighty close. At least per capita, it's much bigger.
Yeah.
To where, like, Europe, you might be able to speak Finnish and get by just fine because there's enough Finnish players.
People, yeah.
Whereas Asia, like Jackie Chen, for instance, he's going to be playing the Las Vegas Challenge. He won the Taiwan Open, I think it was, against a lot of good U.S. players back in the day. It was his first tournament. Mm-hmm. Popped off out of nowhere, won it. I think he won it. It might come second. He's coming over, but that's a great example of what you're saying is, like, if there's nothing where he can't connect. Because Conor McGregor, imagine if Conor McGregor didn't speak English. What made Conor McGregor electric was the, like, quick comebacks, the like insane lines, all of that.
But I think that's,
once you go through a translator and stuff, you lose that.
I think that's also what we were talking about with, like, Phil, for example, his personality and stuff. You can throw him at in events. You can throw him wherever, and you know that you're going to be able to get a good product. Mm-hmm. Some of these pros on disc golf and UFC, in the PGA Tour, in NFL, and all these places, some of these guys, you're just not going to get the same value of them being at an event, being in a commercial, whatever it may be. Chris Paul is another example, right? Like, he's someone that you can just throw into any commercial. Shaq, throw into any commercial.
Yeah.
Where, you don't really see someone like a Joel Embiid in commercials.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's reasons for that, because just how they can be marketed and stuff. But no, there's a good point, Mike, and it's gonna be interesting to see kind of what goes on. But we're gonna switch to someone else now. Appreciate you joining in, man.
Take care, guys. Thanks.
Take care.